Hi, and welcome to an episode of the Jet Rails podcast. I'm Robert, your host, and today we're going to be talking about e-commerce shoppers experiencing checkout problems and if you can win them back. If basically, if that's going to be a linchpin moment where that shopper had a challenge and they're going to jump ship and you're never going to see them again, or if there are things that you can actually do that are going to influence them and make them comfortable to come back, try again, to build that loyalty and that relationship with a brand. And with us today, I've got GQ from the LTV Plus team. GQ, would you do the honor of introducing yourself?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks a lot for having me on the show, Robert. It's a great pleasure to be here. So GQ here, one of the co-founders at LTV Plus, and at LTV Plus, we provide world-class customer service outsourcing services to support e-commerce brands. So we provide dedicated, highly trained agents that provide 24/7 coverage in any language that you need, with English being the base of it. And we also provide payment recovery. So primarily fill payment recovery, and I think that's one of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm pretty eager to dive into that. Dive into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always love to ask tech companies and folks in the space, how did LTV Plus get its name? There's always some interesting story behind a name.
Well, David and I, David being my co-founder, we when we started this business, it was just a really simplistic idea because we both are big. I wouldn't say MPS nerds, but at some level, we're both very customer success driven, and so CLTV, or customer lifetime value, is of great importance to us. And we figured, since we're going to start an outsourcing business that ties in with customer service, our goal with this business is to always increase customer lifetime value. And so that's actually our vision, actually increasing the customer lifetime value of online businesses. And so the word LTV means lifetime value, and plus means like increase, right? So you'll see in the logo, LTV plus basically means lifetime value plus.
I like it. I think that there's a tremendous focus, of course, on conversion optimization and on certain processes, but it's always nice to actually think about the net result. What is it that you're aiming to achieve? Yeah, you want a high conversion rate, or you want some of these, you want a low bounce rate, you want certain things along the way, but you want them for a reason. The same reason that when we talk about lifetime value, you want shoppers to keep coming back over and over again, and you want to build that sticky relationship. And so getting to sort of the theme of today's episode, when we talk about abandoned carts, very common conversation when it comes to that conversion optimization process and not losing shoppers out of the proverbial sales funnel. It's usually about willful abandoned carts, people that either got distracted, or maybe they saw the prices, they're going to go check prices or shipping or other things at other stores. And so in a traditional campaign, you're going to work to bring back those shoppers and try to influence them to say, hey, wait, you left something in your cart, come on back. What happens if we're talking about things like errors or problems in the checkout, that there was a credit card issue or some other kind of challenge that arose? Is it possible to win those users back?
Well, I think definitely yes. Especially, it really depends, of course, on what the transaction issue was, right? Like, so for example, a great point being that you brought up was, for example, if the credit card fails and then a customer is not able to make that purchase, and so they jump off the page and they don't necessarily come back. It is definitely worth your time to follow up with. Well, let's just talk about email campaigns or even an SMS campaign for a start. If you already have their numbers and you can contact them, right? Putting that effort forward and talking to them, and obviously providing a different kind of messaging versus someone who's just left their cart not purchased. Just letting them know, hey, they can always retry their purchase at this link, and just the goal being to make it as simple as possible, and also letting them know what the issue was or is, to help make their purchase. That makes a big difference, because the thing is, you don't want to, that person was already interested to make that purchase in the first place, so why not make it easy for the person to come back if the person was just kind of like out of funds in their credit card.
And I know that a lot of payment gateways and e-commerce systems, that they don't make it easy on the shopper to understand what really happened. They just know that something failed. So
Yep.
I imagine that being able to give them more insight, if the merchant is able to parse in something more meaningful about the error code, or something, that's probably interesting to know, that there weren't enough funds or something else. I don't know how often that's feasible. But would you find that sometimes it's worth adding a coupon at that point to try to, basically you've already lost them, to try to entice them back. Do you have to put extra effort in like that, or is it really just enough to send a link to reclaim the cart, to get back into the cart with the item already there, and to let them know that they can and should try again?
That's a great point. So I would say that, yeah, obviously if you were to sweeten the deal, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you typically see that people throwing like maybe 10%, 20% discount on top. It's like, hey, and especially more so I think for first time shoppers, right? Because the experience is, it's already there. You want to keep it as positive as possible, even though the issue is obviously on the customer side with regards to their cards, but or with the transactions. And of course more so if it's the problem on our end, right? As a brand where, you know, we had some technical issues and therefore we couldn't receive payment. So sending out not just the email or SMS, it's also the coupon, like you mentioned, that's helpful. And I think, and on top of that, one thing that we talk about a lot is a form of personalized outreach, right? So, sure, sending a lot of emails out is through your tools. That's obviously useful, and that does get great results. But if today you wanted to shop for, I don't know, just say a pair of glasses online somewhere, maybe like this what do you call it, computer lenses, the blue blue filter lenses, right? And you make that purchase, and something happens, and you're like, hey, okay, never mind. You close off, you leave because the payment just didn't go through, and like you said, you didn't know the reason why. And then you receive an email, say from John, and says, hey, Robert, noticed that you were trying to purchase this product from us, and the transaction got declined because of X, and they explained to you what the reason was. But I say, no worries, I got you, and here's the link for you to make that purchase again. And on top of that, like you said, adding some special discount or even some loyalty points on top of that, to sweeten the deal depending on what's possible for the brand. I think that will naturally encourage better recovery rates as a result, because in a way, you would have formed a connection with the brand through a person, and I think that's obviously a great start. And then on top of that, hey, you're making it easier for me, and you're also making the purchase price kind of in a way less. Obviously, people, there might be the chance for abuse, but I think you can always risk something like that at the beginning when it's the first purchase from a customer.
That makes perfect sense. And I imagine that actually having a human being talk to them, that there are insights that get gleaned from that agent that's chatting with them, that's speaking with them, can learn more about what their experience was and help translate that back into a better user experience for the website, to give that
Exactly.
feedback. If people are experiencing the same thing over and over again and getting frustrated, that's obviously not healthy.
Yep.
So I think that's key. I mean, would you say that a lot of these users are frustrated in these situations, or they just moved on?
Well,
Because I mean, when they get someone on the phone, they probably don't hold back too much.
well, yeah. I mean, when we talk about phone conversations like that, or even just live chat, right? People get frustrated, and I think it goes two ways, right? So, when that happens, what channels do you have available on your store at the checkout page? Because I guess most people might, for example, terminate the chat piece or whatever on the checkout page to prevent any form of distractions. So, if you will, like, you want to increase your conversion rates, therefore, everything, like, you just want to make it as easy as possible for the customer to make that purchase. However, like you said, if an error does occur and something happens, and the thing is, look, I've already keyed my credit card details, I really want to make this purchase, right? I might go ahead a second time perhaps, because like, I would love to try it again a second time, because hey, I really want this product. But at the same time, could I perhaps hit up customer support and let them know, hey, look, there's something wrong with your, and again, if I didn't know what the error was, but I can hit up live chat, for example, and let them know, hey, that this is happening, I want to make this purchase, what can I do? Just knowing that there's someone there to help. Yeah, there. I guess at some level there will be some frustration, to answer your question, right? Because if you wanted to make this purchase and you couldn't, that's gonna not be a great experience
The
overall. And I
roadblock that
think
you didn't ask for, didn't want. Yeah.
exactly,
That
exactly.
now you're using your time to solve someone else, what you perceive at least as someone else's technical issue, or that most people don't understand that. If they knew that they had no funds, for instance, they'd
Yeah,
understand that. But let's say that it's a security hold on the card. They need to
yeah.
know to reach out to their bank. They don't understand what's happening. They didn't necessarily trigger that purposefully or willfully. So,
Exactly,
uh,
exactly.
and it's interesting that when it comes to the checkout, there can be all sorts of issues with API calls and other things, temporary glitches that you're talking about, a lot of different things between shipping and payments and sales taxes and, uh, tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
The fraud prevention, all sorts of things coming together on the one page. And being delivered from servers and content delivery networks and going through web application firewalls and bot protections and, so any number of things that could have caused them some grief at a given moment that could or should be better optimized. We've seen more merchants now talk about having secondary payment gateways and
Yep.
backups and other things. And,
Yep.
I think conversations that we'll probably wind up covering more on the podcast in the future. But this is all kind of part and parcel of what's going on out there. So, when it comes to these situations, would you say that this is most impacting businesses that have high cart values, that have high average order values, AOV, or that are selling subscriptions and, therefore really getting people on the hook, or, places that have those, high lifetime values where people are coming back frequently, that you really don't want to lose that shopper that, as opposed to somewhere selling a t-shirt one time and, okay, if you lose 5% of your people drop out that you could have recovered, maybe it's not make or break, but that this is more of an issue of that lifetime value figure.
Sure. So I think we can look at that in different ways, right? Different types of businesses, like you said, where like one-time purchases or subscriptions. Now, I think with the subscriptions model, it definitely makes a lot of sense for you to consider not just while you probably have some level of dunning solutions in place, right? You probably have some email campaigns in place, SMS campaigns in place, and depending on the value of your subscriptions, maybe phone calls as well. Once a person is an existing subscriber, you would definitely want to figure out, okay, like what's the best way to retain them? Why is the person not continuing the subscriptions? And from what we've seen, generally it can range anywhere. Like let's say, depending on your churn rate, anywhere between 10 to 40% of that churn rate could possibly be involuntary churn. And we're talking about people who are not intentionally canceling the subscription. They're just, like you said, again, suffering from insufficient funds. Maybe there's like a do not honor code that went through, maybe their credit card expired and they're not sure. They don't know. Everyone's busy. They might not have gotten a notification anywhere. And so not just like, well, first of all, sending out those automated campaigns is a good start. So people understand, hey, your subscription's gonna go on pause because, we tried billing you, but it didn't work. And then, here's a way to update it. But then there's also the point of, what if people don't see it, right? Email, a lot of people are emailing. What if that just goes for spam?
Well,
So
and assume with the subscription that you're getting emails every month that the order got invoiced, that the order shipped, that, you expect to see mundane emails. And so you feel like you can ignore them because that's what you've been able to do for a few months, that you looked at the first couple and after that, it didn't matter anymore. So very easy to skip those things over.
Exactly. And so when you start to skim over such topics and then that gets lost in the mail, you're like, hey, why is my pack of, like, for example, protein bars not coming through every 4 weeks as I've subscribed for? Then well, let's say, like, when we go back to that initial conversation, maybe over an SMS, like you get this message because you obviously agreed to it. You're like, hey, your payment's not working. Like, oh, okay, cool. You get back to that person, and then here's the interesting part. Now, obviously, when people are updating their stuff, that's great. That's automated through their phone, for example, or SMS. But what about if you had a question about that subscription, and today, you're talking about, say, hey, I was asking for like chocolate flavors before, but I want to change it this time. And you don't want to have to go on the website to do it and stuff. You just want to be able to do this over SMS. That's where having for example, a human agent respond to those SMS inquiries would help a lot. Because, for example, now you're telling them, hey, yeah, here's my, I'm ready to update my credit card details, but can you also update the subscription package for me? I want to change it to this, this flavors, blah, blah, blah. That gives the opportunity for your brand to contact or have that conversation with your customer through this agent to figure out an upsell, to figure out, like, how can we change those flavors? And you retain a customer, but not only retain your customer, but you also find an opportunity to create a great customer experience. And people will remember, hey, gosh, you know what? Like, I had this conversation with John and he just did everything for me over the phone. It was easy. And, like, I didn't have to do anything else besides keying my credit card details. Well, I mean, like, with an experience like that, then you're going to remember this brand. And that, as we were talking about before from the beginning, that's another way of just increasing their lifetime value. And I think that applies a lot to subscription based e-commerce brands.
And if you've got someone on their mobile device, which is so often the case, they don't really want to go through jumping through a bunch of hoops on their mobile phone, typing out tons of things, navigating through all sorts of things. They've done that already.
Yeah, exactly.
With email, they're used to no reply ad and that sort of thing, and they don't expect to be able to send a reply and get much of an answer from the average transactional message. But with SMS, with texting, it is a little bit different, where depending on the nature of the message, it's fantastic to be able to respond and actually deal with human beings.
Definitely. And just a funny thing that you brought up there just now, the do not reply, the no reply or do not reply emails. That's a bit tricky, because that's one of, if someone were to see that email already and they had a question or something to send through, I think some brands do make that error where they choose to not receive a reply from that person, because like that's a good opportunity for you to rectify concerns. And hey, maybe their shipping's not there yet, maybe they want to change their order or something, they want to add some stuff. That's I think that at every touch point that you have with your customer, it's always a good way to learn more about what they need, and also another opportunity, as said, to create a great customer experience. And I think in 2022 now, you have a lot of different types of help desks and technologies that allow you to integrate everything into one single contact platform, right? And so there's no need to jump into your inbox just to get back to people. You can receive all of this in one place. And so where brands might be fearful that, hey, we might get a huge influx of inquiries and not be able to attend to them, they're everywhere. You integrate them into one spot, and then there's the next level where you might be able to automate some aspects of those responses. So, for example, if you like to, someone says, "Where's my order?" If they get the shipping and they just want to drop that email back, they don't want to go on your site. It's like, "Hey, where's my order now?" I know a lot of people, obviously, a lot of brands get that. Could you, number one, use your help desk to automatically reply to that email? And so you don't have to necessarily take care of it, and obviously let the customer know that this is a bot reply, but they get that information. And number two, if someone were to send that, could you empower your agents to get responses that are matching that inquiry to quickly send it out, but they get the opportunity to personalize that email before they send it? So, with technology at your fingertips these days for customer service, you get the ability to not just automate messages, but also automate at some level the personalization at scale. And I think that's pretty crucial, because I think one thing that people talk about a lot is how do you personalize? And the concern is, if I have a human agent talking to everyone, it's going to be hard, but technology is making it easier every day now.
Yeah, and look, there are now platforms. There've been for many, many years platforms like Zendesk that offered a lot of features, but now between Gorgeous and Rich Panel, different things that have been coming up, in the space, I think that it's hard not to give that customer service experience the right tools and the right focus.
Yep.
The shopper just wants to communicate, and for better or worse, they communicate through different channels, whether it's phone, whether it's email, whether it's SMS, whether it's Facebook Messenger. You name it, and you need to have that unified record in order to really take good care of them and have it tied in with their order history and other crucial data. And so whether they have a return or something else, like in the case of subscriptions, that's historically, even pre-e-commerce. But I'm thinking really into the early days of e-commerce, it got harder and harder to get merchant accounts for folks that were selling subscriptions, because a lot of the websites had very poor features to pause, cancel, change the address, update it, upgrade or downgrade the product offering that they were purchasing. And so people get very frustrated very quickly. And the first call that they'd make was, when they couldn't get satisfaction, couldn't figure out how to communicate well, they called the credit card company, and they put a stop to that quickly. And when you're getting a lot of chargebacks, credit card processors notice that pretty quickly, and your rates go up. They start holding cash. They eventually cut you off. And so you can really, it's funny in some ways that here we are, we're talking about this in terms of retaining revenue and things, but there are some downstream effects as well to not communicating effectively with shoppers in specific instances, and not not protecting the brand the way that you want to, bad reviews and other things, people, again, frustrated people. That
Yeah.
So that's actually, for me, I think, a good question. How fast do you need to reach out to someone in the case of a failed order or abandoned cart to make an impact? Because it's the web. I mean, I'd like to think that if they're serious about purchasing an item and they didn't purchase it from you right then and there, while some of them may have been distracted and had to take out the dog or change a diaper, whatever is going on in their lives, that there's a good chunk of them that they're going to quickly move on and wind up making that purchase elsewhere. Do you find that there's sort of a sweet spot for how quickly you need to reach out?
Sure. So if we're talking about a failed transaction on that spot and someone were to abandon it because, again, due to technical issues, I think the sooner the better. And I'd say within the first hour, within the first 10, 15, I don't know, like I want to say seconds, but it really depends on how you have it set up. And so you should
Well,
probably set
and
up.
I guess if you're going to offer a coupon or something, you don't want to do it until you feel pretty good about the fact that they've actually abandoned ship.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So it really depends on when you're going to engage with that, but I think the sooner the better because you want to again explain to the shopper as to what the reason was, and then doing it within the first like few minutes or so would be the most ideal. But me just saying that was one thing, but I think you also have to figure out with your demographics as to what the best way is, right? So you would have, besides the initial email or contact point, be it an SMS, email, or whichever, you would also want to consider what the subsequent points of how would your email or your contact cadence work, right? Whereas like with abandonment recovery emails, it could be over a span of the first 24 hours and then maybe maximum 48 or so, depending. You probably want to look at not bombarding people, but test out I think a shorter time interval makes a lot of sense because that's when you want to get in touch, but gradually kind of taper it out as you go. But you probably don't want to try it too often because at some point people get really irritated with it. So we see somewhere between, for example, hitting them up within the first like first 5 minutes even, and then maybe within a day itself, and then maybe maximum amount of 48 hours. But after that, we probably consider it as more of like a, hey, we will contact them, but not to recover the cart per se, but to just kind of put them at the front of their minds. Yeah, front of their minds. Yeah, just kind of like, hey, this is happening. And, because I know that you were going to purchase this before, but hey, check this out. We have this new product or whatever, or this might be more in line with what you're doing. So you don't come off as irritating, but rather you act on it when there's the moment. But if people still don't react, like you said, maybe you throw in a discount later on in the week, depending on the cadence.
Well, and I think in e-commerce, there's been such growth in the last couple of years, and now there's this big focus on how do we better service those shoppers? How do we retain them? Uh, and so, from my perspective, a lot of what gets lost online, of course, is, as we all know, it's that personal touch. So, as opposed to acting almost like pop-up messages, did you buy yet? Are you ready to buy? Can we get you to buy? Here's a coupon. Buy it. Buy it. Instead of being a Jack Russell Terrier and really being, very demanding of them that they do the thing that you really want them to do that's in your interest, reaching out to them. Hi, I'm a VIP personal shopper from brand X, and we noticed that you'd been on the site and didn't complete your transaction. I'm here to help if I can ever answer any questions about our products, or if you ever have technical difficulties, actually treating someone well, the way that if they were in a store, they'd be excited and happy more often than not. And some, of course, I don't want to necessarily say that they're antisocial, but they'd rather do their own research. They don't really want to,
Yeah.
have someone engaged in that level. But in other cases, people are thrilled that that's what's missing in the experience for them. So I think that, there are those different ways of attacking these problems
Yep.
that are going to get very different results. But if you're committing to being available to shoppers and helping them on a higher level, then you've got to have resources to back that up. But that's more than just what I think of as an abandoned cart campaign or a win back campaign. That's offering a higher level of customer service and customer support long term. So, and I'm sure that you've seen where maybe some of these things grow over time, that they start out as smaller campaigns and,
Yep.
and really the results speak for themselves. Uh,
No,
Have you ever
definitely for sure.
been particularly surprised by what you've learned through a campaign? Anything where it was the results were a lot different than you were expecting, or there were technical issues that no one knew about that were only uncovered by having human beings get involved and reach out to people?
Oh yeah,
Something
for
there that
sure, for
yeah
sure.
that was a surprise.
Definitely, for sure, for sure. And we one case that I can remember, as you were saying, that was this is more for like chat cart abandonment. So this was an interesting experiment that we did with one of our clients, and so we had chat available. Funny enough, and we were having conversations and stuff. We didn't like, and this was not picked up, I guess, on our clients' end when they were implementing the chat button and the checkout button. But you know how things have to be responsive, and on the desktop everything worked fine. And I forgot specifically which mobile device, but the chat button at some point started covering the checkout button, and so that was starting. Yeah, so it was like, hey guys, like, dude, like, we can't buy your product. And when we saw that, we had obviously we acted on that immediately, right? Because we saw it as like, oh wow, where is this coming from? And so we dug in, we figured out, because we already had the information of what device the guy was browsing, the store on, blah blah blah. Um, we just acted on that immediately, and so that was something that was completely unexpected because although we kind of figured out the best way to not get in the way, because like having a chat button, for example, you don't want to get in the way of the purchase process. That's that goes against what we believe in it for the start, right? And so that really kind of like that was a really good way of one, I think, good example that I can think of, like just considering that, and customers be giving you that feedback that you can act on almost immediately. On top of that, it's also collecting feedback just generally from conversations where it's, so when we perform these recovery campaigns with human agents, we always like to check in on like, hey, what's, so for example, let's say if a person, it goes two ways. Let's say if a person decides to say, we always like to find out, what's working well, like what they like about the brand or what do they like about the brand and what do you think we could improve. And so some things can come up as like, they like, obviously they will mention like, hey, we like the product because it's useful or whatever. Sometimes it's as interesting as, hey, we really like the messaging that you have behind the brand or like on this particular advertising campaign, and that's why we stuck to it. It's memorable. It's a real mixed bag when it comes to that. And when it comes to why people uh like think that, what some of the what are some of the ways that a brand could improve themselves, it's as simple as suggesting like, hey, if you have this product in a different color, it's as simple as that. It's like, oh wow, really? It's like, and maybe one thing that we realize is that as much as brands are sending out their own different types of surveys or ways to get information back from customers, but when you have them on the phone or over SMS at that point, that's kind of where we're like, hey, we can get that information, and it's sometimes it's hard for people to give responses over automated surveys. That's kind of where we can pull out more information. And I think brands should also definitely consider having someone like some level of human personalized approach to getting this kind of feedback, because you'll be really surprised by what you'll get from people during that actual live conversation.
You know, I'm constantly surprised by feedback from real people in real situations. And it is hard to get people's attention. They're getting so many messages. So if you're just asking them to come back and fill out a review or a survey or something that, I think that there's a bit of numbness and apathy that's been setting in the market, that those things are still important. And I'm not taking away from them specifically, but that for your average brand, your average transaction, the shopper just wants to move on.
Oh
And,
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
there are exceptions to every rule. There are people that that thrive on leaving those reviews and giving that feedback. I think for most of us today, we cherry pick, we pick and choose exactly when and where we're going to spend that time. That it can't always be necessary. So GQ, I think we've covered a lot of really interesting core topics, around this challenge and this problem, around payment failures and cart abandonment and winning people back and bringing up that customer lifetime value. Before we wrap up for the day, any final thoughts, any words of wisdom as we're now into 2022? Anything that you see on the horizon before we let our listeners head out for the day?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that this ties in with one of the things that we were talking about earlier just now, and that is, personalization does not have to be. You don't have to fear personalization at some level. When we talk about customer service, yes, you might have a lean team, but I think help desks these days are pretty well advanced, and they have certain levels of rules or AI to work with that allows you to personalize at scale. So you should be checking that out if you aren't already doing that, because you could be uh, giving your customer service team superpowers with the technologies that they use. I think that's a really big one, because with a team of 4 to 6 agents, for example, you could easily be managing a lot more tickets and handling a lot of things that are repetitive. And if you aren't already looking into that, you should really consider that, because that's going to help you a lot. And our goal is to always help brands turn their customer service into profit centers. And I think it starts with the technology that not starts with, but it's one of the key things that will help turn that around, is to equip your agents right. And even though technologies might seem a little bit more pricey upfront, but you'll be surprised by the value that they can provide and the ROI that you'll get by investing in something that can scale very quickly with a lean team, and that helps to offload the need to scale up your human customer service team tremendously. Rather, you can scale that up as you need it, and and also consider maybe working with providers that are able to help you scale your team up during the holiday seasons, because that's when you need people. And then it's never, because I know that there's a partial stigma around outsourcing, like, hey, could you get the same value if you were to outsource your customer service? I'd say probably start with certain basic stuff, like that you're willing to outsource and test that relationship out. But there's never really an issue with outsourcing. It's just a matter of having the outsourcing team work closely with you, because most outsourcing providers will work with you as if they're like your internal department.
Well, and given the current state of of employment and hiring and things of that, and retention and things of that nature that we're experiencing, I think for a lot of folks that it'll be hard in the at least the short term to be able to scale up their internal teams in a lot of cases where they can benefit from partnering with a team that has those resources available. So
exactly,
that unique times that we're all living through.
Oh yeah, definitely very unique time for the past 2 years. We thought it'd be over last year, but now it's still going on. So hey, let's just keep going.
We'll give 2020 yet another try.
Exactly. 2022. It's like, there's this meme going around about February 22nd and a whole bunch of, it's super funny. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For our listeners and viewers, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll have more great content like this for you soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy. Happy sailing out there.